The groceries slipped from Michael Carter's trembling hands, scattering oranges across the polished front porch of the largest house in Maple Grove, Illinois. His heart stopped the moment the front door swung open. Standing there wasn't just a wealthy stranger. It was Victoria Hayes, the powerful CEO who had fired him 6 months earlier without listening to a single explanation. Her blue eyes widened in disbelief as she recognized the man whose life her decision had shattered. Neither of them spoke. Between them stood 83-year-old Margaret Sullivan, smiling with tears in her eyes, completely unaware that fate had just reunited two people whose lives had been broken by the same painful day. Before we continue this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness, and subscribe to the channel if you believe good deeds always find their way back. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that restore faith in humanity. Just 6 months earlier, Michael had believed life couldn't get any better. Living in a quiet suburb outside Chicago, he worked as a senior maintenance supervisor at Hayes Financial Group, earning enough to raise his 8-year-old son, Noah, after losing his wife, Rachel, to cancer 3 years before. Every morning, he packed Noah's lunch, walked him to school, and drove to work with determination. His life wasn't luxurious, but it was honest, peaceful, and filled with purpose. Everything changed on one rainy Thursday. A costly equipment failure flooded an executive floor, just hours before an important board meeting. Michael had warned management weeks earlier that the aging water system needed repairs. But budget approvals had been delayed. When disaster struck, blame spread quickly. Someone higher up needed a scapegoat, and Michael became the easiest target. Victoria Hayes had recently taken over as CEO after her father's retirement. Under immense pressure from investors and determined to prove herself, she accepted the investigation report without personally reviewing the maintenance records. Michael was called into her office and dismissed within 10 minutes. He tried to explain. He carried maintenance requests, inspection reports, and emails showing he had warned everyone, but nobody wanted to hear them. Walking out with a cardboard box carrying family photos and his coffee mug felt like attending his own funeral. Finding another job proved nearly impossible. Companies hesitated when they heard he'd been fired for negligence. Bills piled up. Savings disappeared. Michael sold his truck, canceled every unnecessary expense, and quietly skipped meals so Noah would never notice the refrigerator becoming emptier each week. Still, every afternoon after school, Michael smiled. Noah never heard his father complain. One evening, while returning from the grocery store, Michael noticed his elderly neighbor struggling to carry heavy bags inside her small brick house. Margaret Sullivan had lived alone ever since her husband, Thomas, passed away nearly a decade earlier. Her children lived far away and rarely visited. Without hesitation, Michael carried her groceries inside. That simple act became the beginning of a daily routine. Every morning after dropping Noah at school, Michael stopped by Margaret's home. He mowed her lawn. He changed light bulbs. He fixed leaky faucets. He shoveled snow. He picked up prescriptions. He drove her to doctor's appointments. He never accepted a single dollar. Margaret often insisted on paying him, but Michael always smiled and gently refused. Helping someone made him forget his own troubles, even if only for a little while. Unknown to Michael, Margaret's daughter, Grace Sullivan, had spent years building one of America's fastest-growing healthcare technology companies. Her demanding career kept her traveling across the country, leaving little time to visit her aging mother. Although she called often, guilt quietly followed her everywhere. Every conversation ended with Margaret talking about the wonderful young man next door. Grace imagined an ordinary, helpful neighbor. She had no idea how much Michael truly sacrificed. One icy December morning, Michael noticed Margaret hadn't opened her curtains. Concerned, he knocked repeatedly before using the spare key she had trusted him with months earlier. He found her collapsed in the kitchen. Within seconds, he called 911, performed basic first aid he had learned years earlier, and stayed beside her until paramedics arrived. Doctors later said those first few minutes had likely saved her life. Grace immediately flew home from New York. She spent several days beside her mother's hospital bed, hearing nurses repeatedly praise the mysterious neighbor who had refused recognition. When Margaret returned home, Grace decided she wanted to personally thank him. But Michael wasn't there. He had taken temporary construction work nearly 40 miles away to pay overdue rent. Weeks passed before their schedules finally aligned. On a bright Saturday morning, Michael arrived carrying fresh groceries for Margaret, unaware that Grace had come to spend the weekend. As Margaret slowly opened the front door, Grace stepped into the hallway behind her. The grocery bag nearly slipped from Michael's hands. Grace froze. She immediately recognized him. Not because they had met before, because framed newspaper articles inside corporate headquarters often featured him receiving Employee Excellence Awards years earlier. Then another memory struck. She had recently attended a leadership conference, hosted by Hayes Financial Group. The keynote speaker had been Victoria Hayes. Grace remembered Victoria briefly mentioning the difficult decision to fire a maintenance supervisor responsible for a catastrophic building failure. She now stared into the tired face of that very man. Only now she saw something entirely different. Not negligence, not failure, only kindness. While sharing coffee later that afternoon, Margaret innocently revealed everything Michael had done over the past 6 months. The hospital visits, the repairs, the groceries he often paid for himself, the nights he quietly fixed broken heaters during freezing temperatures, the mornings he left before sunrise for temporary jobs, only to return and help her again before going home to Noah. Grace sat silently. Every success she'd achieved in business suddenly felt strangely empty compared to this unemployed father who possessed almost nothing yet continued giving everything. Curious, Grace privately asked Michael why he had never mentioned losing his job or needing help. Michael simply smiled. He explained that everyone carries invisible burdens, and Margaret had already lost enough in life. Adding his problems to hers would only make her feel guilty. Grace drove away that evening, unable to stop thinking about him. The following week, she quietly hired an independent investigator to review Michael's dismissal from Hayes Financial Group. The truth emerged quickly. Maintenance reports had indeed warned management months before the flood. Several executives ignored them to reduce quarterly expenses. Internal emails had disappeared from the final investigation. Michael had never been responsible. Grace immediately contacted Victoria Hayes. At first, Victoria defended the company's investigation, but once Grace shared certified documents, archived emails, and engineering reports, silence filled the room. Victoria spent the entire night reviewing every page herself. For the first time, she realized she hadn't simply fired an employee. She had destroyed the livelihood of an innocent father. The next morning, Victoria drove personally to Margaret's house. She rehearsed countless apologies during the drive, but none seemed sufficient. When Michael arrived with groceries, she opened the front door. The moment neither could forget. The same porch, the same eyes. Only now their positions had completely changed. Victoria quietly apologized with tears streaming down her face. She admitted her mistake. She accepted responsibility. She confessed that leadership meant more than making hard decisions. It meant having the courage to correct them. Michael listened quietly. Months earlier, he had imagined this moment with anger. Instead, he felt peace. Holding on to resentment had become too exhausting. Victoria offered him his job back immediately, along with full back pay, restored benefits, and a promotion overseeing maintenance operations across every company property. Michael accepted, but only after requesting one condition. He wanted the company to create a preventive maintenance reporting system, so employees could never again be blamed for ignored safety concerns. Victoria agreed instantly. Within months, the new system saved the company millions while protecting workers throughout the organization. Grace also invited Michael to join her healthcare company as a community advisor, helping design volunteer programs supporting elderly citizens living alone. His experience caring for Margaret became the foundation of a nationwide initiative, connecting volunteers with isolated seniors. Thousands of elderly Americans eventually received companionship, because one struggling father had chosen compassion over bitterness. Noah watched his father rebuild not only his career but his confidence. He often told classmates that heroes didn't wear capes. They carried grocery bags. Margaret proudly attended every community event celebrating Michael's volunteer work, introducing him as the son life unexpectedly gave me. Victoria never forgot the lesson either. Every new employee orientation included Michael's story, not as a tale about corporate failure, but as a reminder that every person deserves to be heard before judgment is passed. If this story touched your heart, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories of kindness reach more people around the world. Special request. Tell us in the comments, what act of kindness has changed your life forever? As the sun set over Maple Grove months later, Michael stood outside Margaret's home after delivering another bag of groceries. His life had changed beyond anything he imagined. Yet one thing remained exactly the same. Success had returned, respect had been restored, and justice had finally prevailed. But kindness had never depended on any of those things. It had always been his greatest wealth. And perhaps that is life's most beautiful truth. The smallest acts of compassion, done when no one is watching, and with nothing expected in return, often become the very moments that change not only our own destiny, but the lives of countless others.